right. So good to meet all of you. My name is Chris McMaster, and I've actually been working with Logos since 2014. I just had my 9-year anniversary. I think it was on October 1st. So been with them for a while. Before I started working with Logos, I was with an organization called New Tribes Mission for about 8 years now, Ethnos 360. I taught at their Bible Institute. And just the short version, after my first year of teaching, they were asking me to prepare all these courses. And, I had a room full of books, textbooks, but what I found was that I felt like there was never enough time in the day to really feel adequately prepared to walk into the classroom. So I went down and talked to my buddy who I taught with and just told him, like, man, give me a list of books. Like, I'll just keep buying books, something, I need help. And he said, well, instead of buying books, maybe you should consider getting Logos. And I didn't really hesitate at that point. I, trusted him. And I think at the time I was 26. So even then, I think the idea of something that leveraged technology, something that was digital, really made sense to me. It made good sense in my mind that would help me accomplish more than the shelves and shelves of books that I already had. So I invested in, at the time, what was called the Logos Gold package, which, if you know much about the levels, back then it was the top level you could get. You could not get a bigger Logos package than the gold. Now the gold is kind of like, really? That's all you have is the gold? It's like a little bit less than kind of right at the middle of the road. So anyway, I started using Logos in full-time ministry and teaching and in seminary, and it was really a game changer for me. It had a dramatic impact on my life and ministry. And so after about 8 years of teaching full-time and finishing my degree in Old Testament, again, I'm trying to give you the short version, but we stepped out of our ministry with New Tribes, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And one day the thought just crossed my mind, it'd be pretty cool to teach people how to use that software, that's been such a benefit to me personally. And so sure enough, I saw a job posting and interviewed and got hired, and was with the company for a couple of years, and then they realized we needed to do a better job on the academic side of things. We needed to actually have people who could do training with faculty and students, who could support our academic partnerships, because we have a lot of schools that actually give Logos to their students, and their students use it in their classes and for assignments. But what we found is a lot of schools were saying, we're really excited about this, but we need more help. And so in 2016, I was the guy that they put in that position. In fact, I'm sitting in my office on the campus of Dallas Theological Seminary today. This is where it started in 2016, when we really first started stepping up how we supported our partnerships. And today, I actually manage the what we call the higher ed customer success team, which really it's a team of guys who are equipped and have the ability to work with our academic partnerships and working with faculty and answering, some of the more challenging questions like Luke's ahead of time. And I look forward to our time. I love teaching people how to use Logos. I have a whole team of guys that do that now, and so I'm not always the one doing it, but any chance I get, I really enjoy it. So anyway, that's enough about me. If you have more questions about that, feel free to hold on to them, and you can ask later.
What is your affiliation to Dallas? Are you a professor there, or is that just where you're stationed?
So it's funny. I don't work for DTS. I do teach a DMin course here that we're expanding on computer tools for exegesis. it's kind of funny. They treat me like I'm part of their faculty, and I go to all their retreats, and it's kind of how they want to integrate Logos at such a level that they want it to look like I'm just part of their team, if that makes any sense. So I don't technically work for them, but they treat me like I do. So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool partnership. So let's go ahead and jump in. Like I said, I've got several questions from Luke, but before I get into those, I just want to say something that I almost always kick off my trainings with. And that's, hopefully this will be helpful, because I heard a lot of you, mentioning kind of this idea of, I've had Logos for a while, but I don't feel like I'm getting everything I should out of it. First of all, just be aware that that's pretty much true for everyone with Logos, because one of the things you have to keep in mind with Logos is that softwares, which there's not that many options anymore, but unlike those, Logos really was and is created with this mindset that it should work for anyone. And so whether you're the layperson in a church, or you're like the expert of experts, Logos is designed to meet your needs. If you're preparing, to preach on the weekends, or you do biblical counseling, or you do apologetics, or you're a theologian, right? There's something in Logos for everyone. And in some ways, that's what makes Logos so great. But in other ways, that's what also makes it feel a little intimidating, because as you start using it, you just realize there is so much here. And for almost everyone, there's always this feeling of there's more. I'm not using everything. And that's okay. That's just how it is. And what I like to encourage people with, I think you probably, I'm sure, experienced this with Greek, but I think it's true of Logos too, that you learn a little bit at a time, right? And as you learn, like today, you're going to take something new away that you can start using. And then if you do more trainings in the future, you'll learn something new. And what happens over time is it just keeps growing. But what I have found, because again, like I said, I very often do all day trainings. No one remembers everything, right? It's just too much, and no one needs to use everything in Logos, because again, it's too much. But hopefully today there will be a couple things that you'll take away that'll really benefit you. And like I said, with our Q&A time, hopefully we can hit the nail on the head with a few things. So back to my point, when I think about Logos, this really robust program, I like to think of it as having two major components. So the reason why I like to break it down like that is, I think if you keep growing in both of these areas, what happens over time is you'll see that you are all the more satisfied with what you're able to do with Logos. So the first major component, which we're not really focusing so much on today, but we can if you want with your questions. The first major component is the library. So I think Luke, when he was introducing himself, said something about he's mainly using the books in Logos, and that is a major piece of the study platform. It's most people who have Logos have at least hundreds, but very commonly thousands of books sitting on their computer in Logos. And if you can't leverage those books well, then what's the point, right? But there's so many tools in Logos that allow us to interact with our books really effectively, to do research, to write our papers really well. And so that's one major piece to Logos, is making sure you can use your books well. The other major piece is what I call the toolbox. Logos is, I grew up around diesel mechanics, but I've also, when I was first going through my training with New Tribes, I worked at a cabinet shop where we built countertops and stuff. And so, I've been around woodworkers and carpenters and mechanics, all kinds of people, and they all have their tools, right? The tools that they need to be able to accomplish their job. And so when you think about Logos, when it comes to biblical studies and counseling and theology and all those different tasks that we want to accomplish, Logos gives you the toolbox that you need to do those things well. So really the key to using Logos is you want to learn how to use your books well, but you also want to become more and more familiar with the tools so that you can grab the right tool for the right task. And so every training, what happens is you get more exposed to, new and other tools that are available, and you spot something and say, that would really help me. And you start using that tool. And the more you use it, the better you're going to get at it. And the more you're going to remember to use it next time you need it. And then you just kind of, your toolbox, you start to become more and more aware of what's available to you. And it just becomes more and more helpful over time, right? So today, though, what we want to do is start off by zooming in a bit on searching. And some of the questions that Luke sent over, really, how do you, for example, search for a word? How do you search for specific forms of words? And what we'll do is we'll use that as kind of a foundation for how we can build on that and create, a bit more complex searches. My guess is most of you probably don't want to build anything too crazy. In fact, I don't, it's not like we need to run super complex searches every day. But I'll at least give you a foundation so that hopefully you can set up, just about, any kind of search that you want, and then we'll go from there. So give me a second to share my screen, and then we will jump in. And there you go. So hopefully you guys can all see Logos. Let me move your faces out of the way here. All right, there we go. So I'm just using the account that I had pulled up on my computer right now. So it may look, some of the resources that I have may look similar to what you have. They may, may be different, but I'll try to use pretty standard resources just for illustration. Now, before we run a search, though, let me go ahead and just start off with a couple of quick tips as far as finding your resources in your library. So by now, I'm sure, all of you are very aware that all of your books in Logos are found there under the Logos library there in your main toolbar. Now, once you go here, there are really a couple of strategies you can use to find your books. You've got your search box at the top, and you've got your filters on the left. So it really just depends. If you know what you're looking for, probably the easiest way to open a resource is just to type in the name or the abbreviated title there at the top, and that's going to narrow down your books. So very common Greek text that people have in their Logos library is the SBL GNT, or the Greek New Testament SBL edition. So just by typing in that name, we can pretty easily, find what we're looking for. Now, if you aren't sure what you're looking for example, maybe you're wondering, what Greek Bibles do I even have access to, or Greek lexicons, or, anything like that, that's where these filters become very useful. So you'll see that there's filters for, my favorite filters that I recommend in my trainings that everyone starts with are the type filters. Because the type filters will allow you, for example, to find your Bibles, your lexicons, your systematic theologies, grammars, atlases, whatever it might be. Those will all be categorized here on the left. And then you're going to find that there's other types of filters for things like subject and language and author, publisher, all those different ways you can narrow down your book list. So if I'm looking for Greek Bibles, I could use these filters. For example, I can choose the Bible type filter, and now I'm only looking at my Bibles. From there, I could narrow down the list further by language. So maybe I want to see, just what I have in Greek. And so that at least will get me down to my Greek Bibles, Greek New Testaments. In this case, we're going to have Septuagint also, Greek Old Testaments, but it's going to be a lot easier to find what I'm looking for once I narrow down my library than if I were to just start scrolling. Again, if you have thousands of books in Logos, scrolling is not the best way to find what you're looking for. So once you find the Bible that you're looking for, a couple things you can do with it. One, click the title to open it, or two, I think like Micah mentioned, we talked about shortcuts, but you can see over here on the left-hand side where my cursor is, there's a shortcut bar. And in fact, I already have my SBL GNT over here in the shortcut bar. But, one of the best things you can do as you're using Logos, those books you use daily or weekly, just grab them from the library and just drag them over. And what you're going to find is next time you open Logos, you don't have to go through that whole process we talked about. You just come over to your shortcut bar, you click, it opens right up, and you can jump right in. So again, just in case that was helpful, for anyone who's maybe just getting started with Logos, I think before we jump into any searches, it's helpful to at least know how to find the books you're looking for. So there's a couple of quick tips for you. Now, I have the Greek text open. There's, a couple different approaches that we could take. We could start with an English Bible if we wanted to, and then add a Greek text to it, or open both of them side by side. One skill I will mention that I'm not sure if you're aware of or not, but in this example, I have an English Bible and a Greek Bible open. Up here in the top right corner of each panel, you have these 3 dots. This is called the panel menu. This actually will allow you to link your panels together. So one of the important skills to learn in Logos is how to set your books and your tools up so that they work really well for you in what we call a layout. And linking panels together is one of those foundational skills that you need because, for example, if you have multiple Bibles open, often we want them to be on the same passage. So in this case, what I'll do, and again, there's multiple ways to do this, but just to illustrate it using link sets, what I want to do is put both panels on the same link set. So I'm going to choose A for my English Bible, and then I'll come over here and choose A also for my Greek New Testament. So now when I'm scrolling, you'll notice they actually stay in sync. And that way, wherever I turn, I can look, either left to see English or right to see Greek, or vice versa, depending upon how you have this set up. Now, I wasn't going to mention this, but some of you, because you're talking about Greek, you might actually find this really helpful too. There is let me see, I might actually have it active. Let me see. Yep. So if you'll notice on my screen, when I'm selecting text in one Bible, it's actually selecting the text in the other Bible too. So for example, what we're going to look at today, we have over here in Ephesians 5:18, we have this imperative or this statement here to be filled with the Spirit. And if I highlight that text in, again, either Greek or in English, depending on what direction I want to go, that's going to highlight the corresponding text for me in the other Bible. And that allows it gives me a visual that makes it a little bit easier, right, to move back and forth. Because sometimes you're starting with the Greek and maybe you want to actually see how is this translated in my English? Or maybe you feel more comfortable with the English and you want to see what the text is in the original. And this allows you to move back and forth pretty easily. So let me show you how to set that up. It's fairly easy, kind of hidden, but fairly easy if you follow me. So up here at the top of your Bible, you're going to see these 3 dots. I call these cannonballs because it's kind of what they look like. This is called the visual filter menu for your panel or for your book. Used to have different colors, so that look like camera filters, but they made it gray. So now it just looks like a stack of cannonballs in my mind. So anyway, when you click on this, one of the visual filters that you will see is called corresponding selection. So if you can see here where my cursor is moving, you will see the corresponding selection visual filter. Now you'll notice that this is unchecked for this Bible. And I'll just give you a quick illustration. So if I come over here back to the same text in the Greek and highlight it, notice that it's not highlighting the English for me. And the reason why that's not highlighting is because I don't have that visual filter activated for my English Bible. So what I want to do is come up here to this menu, put a check mark in the box, and now I have corresponding search results active. So now if I come over here and do that same thing, it still isn't working. So, but it's supposed to. I can't tell you why it's not working, but at least it works in this direction, right? There we go. So same thing with my English Bible. What I want to do is go up to the visual filter menu, put a check mark in the box for corresponding selection. And hopefully for you, it works in both directions there. Well, yeah, it worked this way to start, didn't it? Yeah. Oh, well, maybe it'll kick in here in a bit, but either way, you see the idea of corresponding selection and at least how it's supposed to work. So that's a little bit of a, oh, I checked the wrong box. So there you go, guys. I did that just to illustrate user error for you. Some of you probably saw what I did, but I checked corresponding search results instead of corresponding selection. So there you go. Learn from my mistakes, right? So now
I'm really good at those, by the way.
Yeah.
I do those well in logos.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to click on the wrong thing, but so this, you guys can actually see it working correctly now. So because I've checked that visual filter, now when I select the other Bible, in this case the Greek text is actually selecting for me the corresponding English. And if I had other English Bibles open, maybe 2 or 3 different ones, it would also select that text, allowing me to do a visual text comparison too between multiple English versions, which is you know, a nice help too. So we haven't got very far, but hopefully that was a little bit helpful for how you would find your books once you get them open, how you can link Bibles together, and then even how you can leverage this corresponding selection visual filter, just so you can see the corresponding text by selecting it. I think that can be a really helpful tool. Now, to get into the first question, which was basically, how do you search for a word in the original languages? So what we'll do is we could use any word. I'm just going to use the word filled here in verse 18 of, actually, we'll use the Greek text here. So I'm going to, just to give you guys a visual. So if I select the verb here in English, I'm able to identify that verb pretty quickly and easily over here in my Greek text. So let's say I want to run a search and find all the places where this particular verb is found in this case, in the New Testament, or I might even want to branch out and look at it in the Septuagint or Apostolic Fathers or whatever I want to run, whatever Greek text I want to run that search on, but we'll keep it simple into the New Testament for now. I'm going to give you 3 strategies. But the reason why I'm showing you all 3 is because this is going to allow you to run your searches in different ways depending upon what you're needing to accomplish. So strategy number 1 is you take your cursor and you select the word that you want to study or that you want to run a search for. So when I'm saying select a word, what I'm doing is just clicking and dragging to select that particular word in the text. What you will find in Logos, this is actually one of my favorite features. As far as your toolbox goes, you know, usually when you have a toolbox, you have the tools you use on a regular basis, and then you have the tools that, you know, are on the bottom drawer you don't use very often. I kind of like to describe this selection menu that's popped up. It's kind of like the top drawer of your toolbox. It's like if you select a word, you know, usually there are a few functions you want to accomplish with that word. And so what the selection menu is doing is it's giving those to us right here at the top. So for example, if I want to run a search for that word, I can. There's a couple of other options that we have here for studying the word. We'll come back to that a little bit later. But for now, let's see what happens when we select a word in our Greek text and then just click search here at the top of the menu. So a couple things I want to point out. First of all, it's important for you to note what happened here in the search box. So you'll notice that when you select a word in your Greek text and choose search, by default, what Logos will do is search for what we call the lemma. Now, the lemma, just depending upon how Luke taught you, it's also referred to as the lexical form. Basically, what we mean is when you want to look this word up in the dictionary, what word do you look under, right? So in this case, this is the verb that has been conjugated into this form that we have over here in the actual text. And so by default, Logos is going to run a search for that lexical form, that head word, and this will actually give you a list of all the occurrences of that lemma in any form that it's found in the New Testament. And we'll talk here in a few minutes of how to narrow that down. Let's say you want to search for just the imperative form of this verb. You can do that, but for now, just know that if you take your cursor and you select a word and click search, it will run a search for that lemma. So if it's a noun, it'll search for that noun, the lemma, or in our case, it's searching for the verb lemma. So that is the first sort of basic step there for you to be aware of. Now, you'll also notice at the top of the selection menu, we did have two other options that are worth us talking about briefly. They don't so much have anything to do with searching, but they are part of the word study process. So we have been able to identify the lemma, the plural o. We have the ability to then choose lookup, which will actually look up that same lemma for us in our preferred lexicon. Now, for me, the lexicon that opened for me is BDAG, or a Greek English lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature. You're actually able to teach Logos what you want it to open first when you do these things. And we can talk about that in a bit if that's something you want to know more about. But just by selecting the word and then choosing lookup, it is going to look the word up in my lexicon. And that from there, what I'll be able to do is actually see the range of meanings. Now, a couple other things I'll point out just quickly about lexicons. One, there's a feature in Logos. It's actually one of these visual filters. It's called emphasize active references. I think it's on by default with your lexicons. I can't remember. But you'll notice what's happening is this has actually highlighted the active reference in my Bible, which is Ephesians 5:18. So in a case like this particular verb, not only does it have, multiple meanings, it looks like BDAG's giving us 4, 5, 6 different meanings for this word. So it's got a pretty broad semantic range. And you'll notice there's a lot of references listed here. So when you're using your lexicons, it's helpful to know, under which specific meaning do those who wrote this lexicon, which meaning do they suggest for its usage in this context? And what you'll notice is that could be a pretty time-consuming task if you were to have to read through all of this and try to look for that reference to Ephesians 5:18. But what Logos is doing to help us out is actually highlighting the reference, again, because it knows what verse my Bible is on. It's going to highlight that. And I know now that according to BDAG, they're suggesting that the meaning of the verb here falls under 1B. So of persons filled with powers or qualities. And so that's just a quick tip for you on getting more out of your lexicon is using the emphasize active references visual filter. One other tip that I have for you is you can do this with Bibles, commentaries, and lexicons, but you'll notice at the very top of your Bible, lexicon, commentary, whatever you have open, you'll notice these two slanted lines. Now, this, I think, again, is one of my favorite features in Logos. What might have happened, if you don't know how to prioritize your books in Logos, what could potentially happen is the lexicon that opens up for you initially may not be the lexicon you prefer. And so one of the questions that you may have is, well, how do I get to the lexicon that I actually want on this word? And what's great about this button, this is called the Parallel Books button. Again, you can use it for Bibles, commentaries, whatever. I can easily switch from BDAG to, in this case, I'll just use this intermediate Greek English lexicon. I can jump right to the place where this lexicon discusses the same word. Or maybe I'm studying the Septuagint. I just happen to have a Septuagint lexicon here, and I can see what they say about how the word is used in the Greek Old Testament. for some like foundational background study of that word. And I can do all of that right here from this list. You can actually tell Logos what order to list these. Usually what I do is I actually try to take at least my favorite 5 or 6 and put them in a very strategic order so that I can work methodically through my lexicons. And so again, that's something we can hit on before we wrap up if that's something you have interest in. But at a minimum, point being, this little button right up here at the top of whatever lexicon opens for you is going to make it quick and easy for you to be able to jump around and compare what lexicons say on that specific word that you're looking up. Hopefully there's a lot of consistency in what they're saying about what a word can mean and how it's being used in your passage, but that may not be the case. And so it's nice to be able to explore at least a few lexicons just to see, what they say about the particular word. So just by selecting a word and search, you get your occurrences, all the places where that lemma is found. Lookup will look it up in a lexicon, and from there you can explore all the lexicons you have with an entry on that word. And then the other option that you have is study at the top of your selection menu. Now, the Bible Word Study Guide, which is what will open when you click study, this I find funny, but there's been more than one time in trainings I've had someone talk about, well, oftentimes word studies are a really valuable topic, and oftentimes I've had students say, is there just an easy way to do word studies in Logos, or is there an easy button you can click and just get what you need for a word study? Well, that's pretty much what the Bible Word Study Guide is meant to be for you. So when you click study, you get this Bible Word Study Guide that gives you probably everything and more than you really ever wanted on, as far as studying a word. Now, you have to actually understand how to do a word study and what to do with this information. It doesn't actually do the word study for you, if that makes sense. What it's doing is gathering the information you need to dig deeper into the usage of a word. So I won't go through all of this for the sake of time. You guys can explore this more on your own, but you'll see it's giving me a list of all of my lexicons that, just like we were looking at, here's a list of all my lexicons that have information on this particular word. The translation section, that's basically your easy button for your concordance. So I see what the lemma is right in the middle. I can see all the different ways it's translated by, in this case, I have mine set to the ESV. If I want to explore any particular usage of that word, I can just click on that part of the ring. If I want to see a full list of the usages of that word, I can click the center. That'll give me a full list of all 86 occurrences of that Greek lemma in my New Testament. Now, from there, you start getting into more technical tools. For example, like how's it used in the Septuagint? How does it correspond to different Hebrew words that the Septuagint used to translate the Hebrew? And you can get into some of that background study. One of my favorite sections of this guide, I hate that it's towards the bottom, but you might find it really useful just to be aware of this. There is a really powerful section in the Bible Word Study Guide called textual searches. So if you ever want to go from, for example, studying the word in the New Testament, and you want to run searches in where that word's found in the Septuagint, maybe Apostolic Fathers, really this just depends on what you have in your library. But I could study the usage of this word in Philo, any of the Greek classics I have in my library, Apostolic Fathers, Apocrypha, and so on. And so I could do a pretty robust study of this word by using this word study guide. It's going to give me access to not only how it's used in the New Testament, but also Septuagint and even outside of the Bible. So pretty powerful little tool. And what I hope you're taking away is, other than opening our books, everything we were just able to do and find, we were able to do just by selecting the word in the text. And so we used these 3 functions to search for the word, to look it up in a lexicon, or to study it. Okay, so that is a quick crash course on how to use the selection menu to launch into word study. Again, for most people I work with, just being able to do those things gives you pretty much everything and more, than that you would ever really want for your word studies. Now, second option for running your searches out of your text, and I think you'll find this helpful too, is what we call the right-click context menu. So in this case, to use this menu, instead of dragging to select a word, I'm actually going to right-click on the word. Now, if you're a Mac user, by right-click, we mean the two-finger click on your trackpad, or control-click, just depends on how you're used to doing it. But, I'm old enough where, I lived in the days where everything was a right-click, so that's what I call it. So I'm right-clicking on the word that I want to study. And if you're wondering, well, what's the point of this? Well, let me just mention to you, the way this menu works is it gives you your information on the left side, and then it gives you your functions on the right side. So what's helpful about this menu is you'll notice at the very top, I have it's calling it the selection. If you were doing this in the English text, it would be down here and it'd be called the manuscript. But this is the actual, if you compare this word at the top, that is the actual word I selected in the Greek text. It's not the lemma. It is the actual conjugated, inflected form of that verb. And so if you're ever in a place where, like in the course I teach here at DTS, there are some assignments we give where we say, we want you to search for occurrences of this word with the exact spelling as it is here in the verse. And so if you ever need to run a search for that, you just, again, right-click on the word, you'll choose the selection, and then you'll notice over here, about halfway down on the right, you'll see all these different search options. And just to keep it simple for now, I'm just going to click the Bible search. And you'll notice that it has searched specifically for that word with this exact spelling in the New Testament. And we only have one occurrence of that. Okay. But the right-click context menu will allow you to broaden your search. So in other words, it'll give you broader options. So you can search for the words in the exact spelling. I could choose the lemma here. Now, the lemma in Logos will always have this little translation ring next to it, which should now make more sense to you because you saw the Bible Word Study Guide. So remember, the Bible Word Study Guide has the lemma in the middle, and it's got that ring around it. That's your lemma. And so when you see that ring here, that is going to be the lemma, the lexical form, what you look up in the dictionary. So if I wanted to run a search for that, again, I would select it on the left, come over here, and then click my search options. So again, just for example, I click Bible, and now it will run a search and find all the occurrences of that lemma, just like we did earlier. Only other thing to really point out here is this is also going to give you the ability to search for the root. So the way I like to describe searching for the root is, keep in mind when you search for a lemma, that's going to be limited to a part of speech, right? So to fill, right? Verb. But what about adjectives like full, or nouns like fullness, right? You might want to actually find results that include adjectives and nouns and verbs that are all related to that same meaning. And in that case, you might actually want to run a search for the root. So again, all you have to do is select what you want to search for on the left, come over here, and then click your search option, and then Logos will run that search for you. So two ways you can launch into search for a specific word would be either the selection menu or by right-clicking on the word, and then you can choose the exact form, the same spelling, or what we call the manuscript. You could search for the lemma or the root. Now, the next question was, once you run a search for a single word, how do you actually search for a specific form? Now, if you guys watched the training ahead of time, one of the things that hopefully you learned is that once you have a search like this run, so I've got my lemma here, but let's see here in the text, this is actually a present passive imperative form. So let's say I actually wanted to find other occurrences of this verb with that same form. What I can do is come over here next to my lemma and add the @ sign. So if you're in the Bible or the morph search in the search panel up here, over here on the left, once you have a lemma in the box, you can then put your @ sign. This opens up what I call the morph selector. And then from here, what you want to do is just specify the form that you're looking for, because I know I'm studying a verb. I'm going to start with verb, and then I can do present, and then I could do passive imperative. I'm just going to select those from the list, hit return, and then we'll see what results we get. Probably just that one, because we already ran the search for that earlier. But this is how you specify forms in your searches in Logos. One of the things that you should keep in mind is that when you run these searches, you don't actually have to have a lemma in there. So for example, I might want to do something like this. Show me all the present passive imperatives that come before, we'll say, 2 words in. So we'll do the preposition in. So what I'm doing is I'm putting in these operators. So I'm using the sequence operator before. Now I'm putting it in all caps, because if I don't use all caps, what'll happen is Logos thinks I actually want to search for that word in the text, right? So it's going to look for the word before. So I have to put it in all caps. And then I combined the sequence operator with the proximity operator. So I just put in 2 words, or you could do 2 characters. Words and characters, those are pretty much the, the distances that you can use. And then what I did, I didn't show you this earlier, but I meant to. If you ever want to manually put a word into one of your searches, for Greek, what you'll do is type in G:, and then you'll type in the transliterated form of the word. So again, for the preposition, I just put in en, and then I'll just choose my lemma from the list. Our verb, if I just start trying to spell in the transliterated form there, plero, you'll see, as long as you're not too far off, usually it figures out what you're looking for. And I can see a list of the lemma and the root, and I would just pick it from the list. But for our example, we're doing the preposition. I hit return. And now we'll see if there are any other occurrences where we find a present passive imperative before our preposition in. And so we could dig into this a little bit more and start to explore, the combination of the usage of that verb form with this preposition, and see if that gives us any insight into the meaning here in this specific passage. So that's how you would combine multiple forms. You can control the distance between the words and even the order that the words are in. So yes, you can definitely you can choose to search for specific forms of words using Logos, and again, the @ sign after a word is where you will find that menu. That's how you'll get it to pop up. Now, I'm looking at the clock, noticing we don't have a lot of time left. What I'm going to do is just mention there were a couple other questions. Actually, one other big one that I was going to mention. One question that Luke asked is it possible to see my highlights in one place? And then also the question is there a way to have Logos highlight certain forms or parts of speech for you? Now, before I answer those, I'm going to go ahead and just pause here, because again, I want to make sure that we're able to answer some of those key questions that you have. I don't have a hard stop at 5. You guys might. And so I want to be respectful of your time, just in case we do need to stop right at 5. And I'll let Luke, make that clear when the time comes. But I'm going to pause there and see what questions you have that I can answer. If you want me to talk about the auto highlighting different forms, let me know, and we'll take a look at how to do that here before we wrap up. So I'm going to pause. What questions do you have that I could dig a little bit deeper into?
Can you briefly show how to search like a verb and a subject together?
So yes, I can. Keep in mind that when it comes to something like subject, you have a couple of routes you can go. Number one, in Greek, for example, you might want to limit your search to a specific case, something like that. But if you're trying to find, for example, just data that says here are the subjects in the text, that is going to put you in a position where you are depending a bit on, well, quite a bit on human tagging and data, which Logos has a lot of. So we can definitely use that, but just I say that just to say there's a couple of different approaches you can take, but I will show you where I would start with that. So because I don't know if you guys have noticed this, it just depends on how much space, how big your panel is. There is actually a more drop down here at the top of your search panel. And so to find the clause search, which is what I'm going to illustrate, I actually need to click on more, and this is where I'll find clause. So the clause search is the search in Logos that allows us to tap into that, for example, subject or object tagging for clause relationships. And again, we're really depending in a lot of ways upon human data collecting and tagging, but again, still really helpful. Now, when you use the clause search, you actually have to start off making sure you're searching the right Bible. So you'll notice I'm set to Hebrew. So if we want to search Greek, we need to make sure and pick that option here from the list. Now with the clause search, you only have 3 options for searching because these Bibles have the most extensive tagging in them in Logos. And so I'm going to choose my SBL Greek New Testament. So just to give you a quick example, I'm going to start typing subject in the box. Now you'll notice to choose the subject, I have a couple of options. I have subject lemma. And so lemma, you could specify a specific lemma that you want as the subject of a verb. The one here that says subject colon, and there's nothing else there, that actually uses our data sets. So just to give you an example, if I said subject colon Jesus, then what I'm telling Logos is whether it's a pronoun, now, if it's the name, whatever it is that's referring to Jesus, I want to include all of that. So any tagging we have for the person Jesus, when he's the subject of a clause, this is going to capture it. So it's not going to be limited to a specific lemma. It could be multiple lemmas as long as Jesus is what it's referring to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll use that one as example. And then let's just say we want the verb of the clause to be whatever. You'll see you have a few different options here. I'm going to go with, I mean, you could say, I just want to find all the places where Jesus is, the subject and then the verb is in a specific form. You could do that here. I'm going to keep it simple and just look at a lemma. So verb lemma, colon, and we'll just go with something easy like agapao. So what are all the clauses in the New Testament where Jesus is the subject and the verb is love? So I just plug that in, hit return. Now I have all of my clauses. I could add an object if I wanted to. So I'll say object God. And so now I found a clause in the New Testament where Jesus is the subject. Notice that the clause, or it's just, there is no explicit subject, right? It's a first person verb. So the I here is Jesus. Logos knows that, right? And then the Father, referring to God. So that's how the clause search works, is it's actually leveraging the power of all that tagging, even at the subject and object level. So Luke, I hope that's at least enough to introduce how you would set that up. The clause search is going to be your best and easiest way to try to get started with a search like that.
Yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Hey, Chris. Yeah, Chris, I figured out how to see all my highlights in one place, so you can discard that question.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Thanks.
Yep.
I have a question if nobody else does.
Yeah, go for it.
So what if I want to search either a verse or a clause or an idea be filled with the Spirit in any of the other books I have in my library, say a historical theology book, did John Wesley in his sermons ever mention this concept, this word, is that possible?
Yeah, there's again, different ways you could set that up, but just to give you an illustration. So if I was to open a search, and we kind of, had Logos open the searches for us earlier, but just give you a quick tip. You'll always be able to open up a search manually over there on the left-hand side by clicking your magnifying glass. Now, at the top of the search panel, you've got lots of different search types, but as far as searching your books, you want to choose the book search, which probably sounds fairly obvious, but I'm going to go ahead and click. Now, mine is, I was testing some things earlier for a training I'm doing on Friday. So what I'm going to do here at the top is where mine says selected books, I'm going to go ahead and just switch that back to all books. Yours probably already says all books, but if not, just know there's a menu there that you can click on. So again, a couple of ways we could go with this, and I hope I'm at least giving you enough illustration to answer the question. But one option is you could come in here and type in Ephesians 5:18. Oops, 5:18. Now, what I like to do, just to make sure the search runs well, is I like to choose the reference that it suggests for me. And you'll see it's going to format it properly for the search when I do this. So what it's done is it has formatted a search that knows to look in all of my books for a reference to Ephesians 5:18. And so now in my entire library, I know every place where that reference is mentioned. Now, from there, though, you might say, well, this could talk about drunkenness or whatever I'm really interested in, filled with the Spirit, something along those lines. From there, what you could do is add other search terms. So, for example, I'm going to put a space and just, for example, put Spirit. And that is going to help narrow down, actually, what I could do is do something like a near proximity, just to make sure they're not, super far apart. And that's actually narrowed down my results pretty significantly by about 1,000. So now any places where Ephesians 5:18 is mentioned near Spirit, or you could put, I'm trying to think, there's a lot of ways we could do this. You could do, Spirit filling different words. The reason why I'm hesitant to do like filled by the Spirit is because it's translated different ways. Some places it's filled with the Spirit. Sometimes it's filled by the Spirit. So in this case, you just want to be careful not to get too specific, because you might end up missing out on some results. So you might want to try different phrases or different keywords. But this would basically be how I would set something like that up. Now, if you're wanting to only look in, for example, say Wesley sermons or Calvin sermons or whatever it might be, that is really a question of, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. That would really be a question of how do we narrow down what we're searching in our library. So I'll just give you a quick example here. I'm going to take commentaries and then type in Calvin. And so here's I'll just use this as, we'll just use this as an illustration. So here's a translation of Calvin's commentaries. So let's say I want to search that. I'm actually going to find it in my library, right click on it, and then say, search this book. Okay, for simplicity, I'm just going to copy and paste what we did in our whole library, and I'm going to paste it in here. And I've got nothing, but let's say we just look at Ephesians 5:18, still nothing. Well, so it didn't work out in this case, but that's essentially what you would do is you would pick the books that you're wanting to search. Again, it could be one book, multiple books, and then you just right click on however many books you have you want to search, and then say search these books. It opened up over here. I'm going to paste it, hit return. Still no results, but anyway, I'm just throwing out examples as we go there. But does that help at all? Like how you would try to drill down into your library for references and then narrow that down? Maybe not.
No, it does, and it makes me actually more likely to buy books in Logos. I don't like reading ebooks, but I also get frustrated when I'm reading a book and really enjoying it, and it has some really great treatment of the scripture, and I think, now, how am I going to remember when I'm studying this passage if this book has really great things to say about it? And if it was available on Logos where I could say, hey, have I noticed this in any books or whatever, then I could, I could search it that way. I didn't know you could do that, so that's a significant plus for me.
Awesome.
You can also add your paper books, Fred. Books you've already bought in paper, you can add them to Logos, and Logos will search for them, find where it's at in your paper book, and tell you the page number.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
You don't have to buy them again.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You can't read the book if you don't have it in Logos, but it will search for it for you if it's in its library.
Yeah.
It's a really cool feature.
Oh, man, that's huge.
Let me
I wonder
see
how you do that.
So
Use an app.
you can see here on my screen. So this is just a book search, and I grouped it by library. So basically when you do this, it'll give you results for your downloaded books, cloud books, meaning the books that you own but aren't downloaded on your device, and then also your print library. So I've got a book right here that is not in my Logos library, but I just used a broad search for Spirit, and you can see what it's doing. Like imagine it's on my bookshelf here behind me. It's telling me this word is found 8 times in the book, and it's actually telling me I could go grab the book off the shelf and turn to page 620, and that's where I'm going to find all these search results. So in fact, you can see it's showing me, other occurrences or results also. But again, these books that I have right here are not in my Logos library. It's actually searching what we call the print library. So just a quick tutorial on that for you. The way you'll use this is you'll go into your library, and then up at the top, if you can see where my cursor is, instead of library, you'll want to switch to add to library. Now you'll want to probably write down a note, because you don't want to forget later that you want to make sure that you're in the right place. I can't tell you how many emails I've got from students who, they said, hey, I took your training yesterday and now my books are gone. I had my books and they disappeared. I can't, every time I search for them, they don't pull up. And then, they'll send me a screenshot and they're still in the add to your library instead of their library. So if you switch this, don't forget to switch it back later. So if we go to add to library, this basically will give you a pretty extensive list of every book available in Logos. And so what you do is you search for the books that you want to be able to add to this print library catalog, books that you have that you want to be able to search, even though you don't own them in Logos. So you can use filters to do that. There's a lot of different approaches that you can take, but what I'm going to do just for fun is I'm just going to type in, here, I'll just do something like Piper. So let's see here. Okay, I'm getting a lot of weird stuff, but let's say we want to do the author John Piper. And here's a book Disability and the Sovereign Goodness of God. So maybe that's a book that I own that I really want to be able to search for a sermon I'm doing on disabilities in the church. What I'm going to do is come over here and add it to my print library. So I find it, I'm going to add it to my print library. Okay, so now that has been added. Later, if I want to remove it, you can come back and do the same thing. You'll see that button has now switched to remove from print library. So you could do whole commentary sets. You can do, your systematic theologies, Greek grammars that you have on the shelf, but that you don't have in Logos, whatever that might be, and you can build those into your print library. So a couple ways you can use that. One, now when I go back to my library, I can actually right click on this and search this book. So everything we just did earlier, I have the ability, let me put Romans 8 in here, and we'll just see if there's so all the places where Piper talks about Romans 8 in this book on disabilities, I now know. I can, although this isn't, this is an ebook that doesn't have page numbers. So terrible example for me to pick, but if I picked a book that had page numbers, then we would be seeing the page numbers where I can go, then pull the book off the shelf and then, find these search results. Maybe my sermon's on Romans 8 and disability, and, this would help me to be able to then go use that book, even though I don't have it in Logos. So sorry, my illustration broke down a little bit there, but hopefully that helped a little bit.
Well, that's great. If I do I have to, is there a place where if I'm searching something, do I have to actually search my add to library books? Or if I just do a regular search, just doing whatever, will it add in my print library to whatever search I'm doing?
Yep. So if
sense.
we go back over to this panel on the left, if I type in Romans 8, just like I did a second ago, you'll notice here's all my results in my downloaded books. And then if I collapse that, here's my print library results. Okay. And so we're going to see all the books in my print library. And we would also see, eventually we would come across that John Piper book somewhere. There it is right here. So disability and the sovereign goodness of God. So it's now included in my search results here in my all books search.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. Thanks. That's really big to me. I appreciate that.
Yep. You're welcome.
So does that only search downloaded books, or does it also search books that you have in your library that are not downloaded?
Well, if you do an all books search, this cloud books, so this is, I don't have many books that aren't downloaded, but these results right here are from books that aren't downloaded that I do own in Logos. So they're called cloud books in your results. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Chris, my question is really probably far more basic. I continually run into challenges where my screens and menus look significantly different than colleagues. So for example, when you were showing how to add to a print library, I don't have a button to add to print library. I only have an option to buy. When I click on books, you have options for downloaded, cloud, and print library. I see none of that. Earlier when you were doing the more option, I don't have a more function underneath my search. Is that simply some package issue that I don't have that doesn't allow me those functions?
That's what it sounds like to me. My guess, if I had to guess, if we pulled up your account, my guess is you have the you have what we call the basic or the free edition. And so all that you're seeing is a difference in functionality or features. Even though you have the we call it the engine, you have, the interface, but the functions are more limited. But the only way that I could say for sure is if we actually looked up your account, and we could do that if you want, but that'd be my guess. Which is probably right. But again, okay. I can't say completely for sure, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Fred, just so you don't get discouraged when you go to add your print library, you have to have Logos 11 and one of the two top tiers. Is that right, Chris? be able to use the print library function?
So print library comes in what
Boxes.
it comes in what we call the full features. And so just to give you guys a visual, with Logos, like say the full features, you can always purchase just the feature upgrade. So in this case, you see here's the Logos 10 full feature upgrade. It could be purchased on its own. So if you had all the books you wanted, then you could just do the feature upgrade. And a lot of people do that. It tends to be one of the more cost-effective options if you don't need more books. As far as the different base packages go, the level that let's see, the level that has the full features is the gold. So the gold and above has print library, but anything below the gold does not have print library. So you can buy features or you can buy the package that has the features in the books. So hopefully that makes sense and isn't too confusing.
Yeah, I sense an upgrade in my future.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, like I said, I work primarily with academics, and when Logos 10 came out, I would say the majority of people I know who bought Logos 10, that was the one thing they bought it for, was just the print library feature, because it was so helpful to them. So
yeah.
Chris, I just sent you a screenshot in the chat. What you'll see is the Lexicon Analytical Lexicon of the Septuagint opened on the right, and you'll see Septuagint with Logos morphology on the left. This is actually a screenshot Chad's computer. He was screen sharing one day. I was like, how did you do that? If you look at the bottom in the little pop-up window, it's showing both the Greek parsing and English transliteration, and it's showing the Hebrew also.
correct. Yeah.
That is awesome. I want to be able to do that, but I could not figure it out.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit less complicated than it sounds. It's not a feature of Logos. It's actually a feature of that specific Septuagint. So that Septuagint is tagged with both Greek information and Hebrew data. And so if you have the Septuagint with Logos morphology, which I think is the best Septuagint for Logos, because like you said, it gives you all that data and it's really great for searching. That is how you will get that information. There's not like a toggle or a setting somewhere to change. You just have to have that particular book.
I do. I have that, and it's only showing me the Greek.
Well, I do. It's like, how do I say this? I would just double check. You know what? I don't know if it's in this package. Let me see. John Piper does not have it, but let me see if it's. Yeah, I don't have it in this specific package I'm using here, but that lexicon has that information. There's no way to adjust that. So yeah, you could shoot me an email if you want, and we could try to dig into it a little bit deeper, but I feel as confident as I could without looking more into it that resource, if you're opening the right one, it should have that same information for you.
Okay.
Again, I'm not trying to say you're crazy or anything. I just, that's how that resource is meant to work. So I don't know what would be going on there.
Alrighty.
All right. Any other big questions?
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, honestly, we could easily have a 3-hour conversation and talk about all kinds of stuff. So if you feel like our time today, you're leaving with more questions that you still need answers to, I'm happy to do another time where we can say, well, we know we've got some of this foundational stuff out of the way, let's just jump into more advanced questions. Whatever to help you guys the most, I'm happy to do that. One other thing that I will share with you as we just close, there's 2 sites that I will introduce you to if you're not aware of them already. The first one here is going to be, make sure I'm sending it to everyone, logos.com/student training. So this is a training site with our we have this foundational trainings we do all the time for students. And so all those trainings are here on this page. And if you scroll down, you get into some more specific content related to preaching, theology, spiritual formation, stuff like that. I usually don't do this, but I'll show you guys too. There's another training page here that's actually designed for faculty. What's nice about this, and I put the link there in the chat for you, logos.com/faculty training. What's nice about this page is instead of bigger, longer trainings, you've actually got videos broken down into very focused little chunks. And so when you get into your biblical studies and languages, if you're looking for a video just on word study or how to do the morph search, or you want to know how to run a syntax search in Logos or whatever, we've got videos that we've created, on all of those topics. Again, the theology, church history, spiritual formation, just about anything you want to know about how to use Logos, we've developed content for our schools here on this page. You're welcome to use this because, again, I know we don't interact with each other a lot. This was kind of a special time tonight for us to do this, but I want you guys to have resources to keep learning, and you're welcome to use both of these pages for sure.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome.
Appreciate you lining up, Luke.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thank you very much.